my channel. Today we are going to discuss about what is hypothesis. We have heard of many hypotheses which have led to great invention in science and educational research. Assumptions that are made on the basis of some evidence are known as hypotheses. In this chapter, let us learn in detail about the hypothesis and the type of hypothesis with example. Table of contents: what is hypothesis, characteristics of hypothesis, sources of hypothesis, types of hypothesis, simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis, directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, null hypothesis, associative and causal hypothesis. Examples of hypothesis: function of hypothesis. How will hypothesis help in scientific method? What is hypothesis? A hypothesis is an assumption that is made based on some evidence. This is the initial point of any investigation that translates the research question into predictions. It includes components like variable, population, and relation between the variables. A research hypothesis is a hypothesis that is used to test the relationship between two or more variables. Characteristics of hypothesis. The following are the characteristics of hypothesis. The hypothesis should be clear and precise to consider it to be reliable. If the hypothesis is the relational hypothesis, then it should be stating the relationship between variables. The hypothesis must be specific and should have scope for conducting more tests. The way of explanation of the hypothesis must be very simple, and it should be understood that the simplicity of the hypothesis is not related to its significance. Sources of hypothesis. Following are the sources of hypothesis: the resemblance between the phenomenon, observations from past studies, present day experience, and from the competitors, scientific theories, general patterns that influence the thinking process of people. Types of hypothesis. There are 6 forms of hypothesis, and they are simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis, directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, null hypothesis, associate and causal hypothesis. Now we can see simple hypothesis. It shows the relationship between the dependent variable and a single independent variable. For example, if you eat more vegetable, you will lose weight faster. Here, eating more vegetable is an independent variable, while losing weight is the dependent variable. Complex hypothesis. It shows the relationship between two or more dependent variables or two or more independent variables. Eating more vegetables and fruits leads to weight loss, glowing skin, and reduce the risk of many diseases such as heart disease. Directional hypothesis. It shows how a researcher is intellectual and committed to a particular outcome. The relationship between the variables can also predict its nature. For example, children aged 4 years eating proper food over a 5-year period having higher IQ level than children not having a proper meal. This shows the effect and direction of the effect. Null hypothesis. It provides a statement which is contrary to the hypothesis. Its negative statement that there is no relationship between independent and dependent variables. The symbol is denoted by HO. Associated and causal hypothesis. Associated hypothesis occurs when there is a change in one variable resulting in a change in another variables, whereas the causal hypothesis proposes a cause and effect interaction between two or more variables. Examples of hypothesis. Following are the examples of hypothesis basis of their types. Consumption of sugary drinks every day leads to obesity is an example of a simple hypothesis. All illness have the same number of petals is an example of null hypothesis. If a person gets 7 hours of sleep, then he will feel less fatigued than if he sleeps less. It is an example of a directional hypothesis. Functions of hypothesis. There are functions performed by the hypothesis. Hypothesis help in making an observation and experimental possible. It becomes the start point for the investigation. Hypothesis help in varying and the observation. It helps in directing the inquiries in the right direction. How will hypothesis help in scientific method? Researchers use hypothesis to put down their thoughts directing how the experiment would take place. Following are the steps that are involved in the scientific method: formation of question, doing background research, creation of hypothesis, designing an experiment, collection of data, result analysis, summarizing the experiment, communicating the result. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye.